Hello everyone. Before I even start, don't take this as me completely bashing Point Blank Barrage. I think it's a really fun ability, and I've been using it a little bit more, trying to experiment with it as I try and farm masteries just to spice up the grind a little bit. It does have its moments to shine, but it's kind of like playing a Warlock in World of Warcraft, and where when you shine, you really shine. But when you use up all your cooldowns and you're stuck with casting Demon Bolt just over and over again, you sort of become background noise. And I feel like Point Blank Barrage kind of compares to that. It already limits the already very limited Ogryn class even further. While it can be fun to cause mass destruction, once you run out of ammo and grenades and the enemies start to engage in melee, it kind of loses its luster. It kind of loses its ability to really shine. Now, my first big problem with it is that it has a huge lack of damage mitigation and toughness regeneration without certain ranged weapons and blessings. For instance, without the heavy stubber, you kind of lose the whole point of the actual combat ability. So while things like mobile emplacement will offer damage reduction while bracing, again, it kind of forces you to use a weapon that will allow you to brace for long periods of time. And that really eliminates about 2/3 of the already small weapons available to you. Really, between the Ripper Gun and the Heavy Stubber, you kind of are locked into those two. The other weapons are fun to use, but you really lose out on a lot of the point of using this whole tree with those weapons. The same can be said about blessing options as well. Like, Inspiring Barrage almost becomes a necessity in moments where you'd like Point Blank Barrage to shine. Perks like Reloaded and Ready and Steady Grip really do help, but the toughness they replenish, in my opinion, is not enough for a target as big as an Ogryn, as they just seem to attract bullets from everywhere. So then, like, for instance, if you use their Rumbler, their Kickback, their Grenadier Gauntlet, you're kind of locked into this weird situation where you're just bracing for one shot. And meanwhile, I mean, that gives enemies plenty of time to run up to you and start hitting you. I mean, of course, you have variables like teammates with the veteran shout, which can knock people down, give you a little bit more toughness. The Zealot's little tome that they pull out to be able to push things back again, giving you toughness. Or, like, for instance, the Psyker's ability to smite the enemies, kind of keep them at bay while you take time to set up. It just is a little bit lackluster, in my opinion. And then, of course, if you decide to use the keystones in the tree, Lucky Bullet kind of requires you again to go a high-capacity automatic weapon that allows you to benefit from the full effect of the build. Where Burst Limiter Override might actually proc on weapons like the Kickback on the Grenadier Gauntlet, it's not really, giving you the full intended effect. Sure, it's great to have another extra shot, but in my opinion, with this build, you kind of want continuous fire. And of course, blessings like Charmed Reload and Inspiring Barrage, they pair very well with perks like Good Shootin' and Massacre. It's again sort of a forced build example that requires specific weapons and scenarios to maximize the full effect. And in those effects where you're kind of using Good Shootin' or you're using Massacre, you kind of want to be constantly shooting. I mean, that's the whole point. You kind of want to have a constant stream of fire going out so that you can suppress enemies, light them all on fire, really benefit from those critical strike procs, and kind of just keep feeding bullets into your weapon while also maintaining a steady amount of toughness damage reduction as well as toughness regeneration. As I said before, I mean, Ogryn already has a lack of options in their arsenal. And Point Blank Barrage, I mean, it limits you further by forcing you to use the high ammo automatic weapons to get full effects. A good example of this would be Bullet Bravado. Bullet Bravado, while Point Blank Barrage is active, it replenishes 2% toughness for every shot fired and 10% toughness on each reload. Now, I mean, that 10% toughness on each reload would pair well with the Kickback or with the Rumbler because you're constantly reloading and you're reloading rather quickly. But again, it really doesn't justify the amount of toughness replenished from that. I mean, it's a very small amount of toughness, the 10%. And so with that constant toughness regeneration, you'd really want the Heavy Stubber or maybe the Ripper Gun. But these weapons, in particular the Heavy Stubber and the Ripper Gun, they also force you to become a bit of an ammo hog. And without ammo, your combat ability really gets nullified, and you'll end up relying on your melee weapon. So if you're going to already be using your melee weapon, you might as well benefit from the toughness regeneration, the damage boosting, and the damage reducing perks from the left two trees, such as Furious, Smash 'em, and the Best Defense, No Stopping Me, Delight in Destruction, and Implacable. I get that you have an increased ammo capacity of 25% if you decide to build ammo stash, but without the option of auras such as the Veteran has, you will still find yourself constantly on the prowl for more little shinies, and it doesn't benefit you, and it really doesn't benefit your team. I mean, I know that we're all supposed to be sharing ammo, but with this build, I mean, you are really chewing through ammo without the ability to kind of generate ammo yourself or engage in proper melee combat like an Ogryn should. I'll even touch on this a little bit later, but like, for instance, the Zealot. The Zealot has a good ability to pull out their ranged weapon, kind of do some damage when they need it, but then close in quickly still and engage in heavy melee combat. But again, we'll touch on that in a second. So, in my opinion, overall, point blank range or point blank barrage really pales in comparison to the other two trees in variation of weaponry that you can use, blessings available to you, and overall damage output, incoming damage reduction, and total usefulness that you can provide to your team. If anything, I mean, I've seen and I've been in situations where point blank barrage really does shine, and it can really assist in kind of getting those enemies to be lit on fire, doing some damage to them, and then of course adding some suppression and taking care of other ranged classes like gunners and all that. But let's be honest, if you were going to come up against 3 Ogryns, would you rather have this guy charging at you with a bunch of his buddies and their big old hammers? Would you rather have this guy coming up to you with his shield out and blocking pretty much everything you throw his way? Or would you rather have this guy come out with his nipple hanging out and his mascara running down his face? I don't know, between all the 3 of them, I think I'd choose the nipple guy. So I do want to offer a solution that, obviously it's just my opinion, but I think that a solution to this may probably be to either rework Point Blank Barrage completely by having more of a focus on being melee ranged hybrid, like you can do with the Veteran and Zealot. This is what I was talking about before. Now, with the Veteran has plenty of abilities that make quickly swapping between melee and ranged weapons very beneficial, even desirable in many cases. And the Ogryn is really, they're meant to get in and get killing, right? So, I mean, if the Veteran can do it, I really think that the Ogryn should have the opportunity to as well. And again, I know that you can, kind of cross-build with pretty much any class, right? But the Ogryn, in my opinion, they kind of set it up where it's too dedicated to each class. I think that the Loyal Protector and the Bull Rush trees are indomitable. I think that those are really great trees. I think that they can have some variability between them. I think that you can kind of cross over into each one and still kind of reap the intended benefits of either tree. However, with the Point Blank Barrage tree, it's so heavily dependent upon not only the combat ability itself, but the perks that are offered, and kind of the keystone as well. I guess if you really could go get the Point Blank Barrage ability and then build maybe into the Indomitable tree just to get a little bit more tankiness. But at the end of the day, you kind of lose the intended effect of the Point Blank Barrage tree if you do that. Whereas, like I said before, the other two are interchangeable, and Veteran and Zealot kind of have the same thing going on, where you can kind of mix and match and still do really well. The Ogryns, they laid down heavy range firepower without the range skill tree already. But given how big they are, being able to go from lighting the battlefield up to knocking body parts free is something that Loyal Protector and the Indomitable trees have done very well. With Indomitable, you can rush across the battlefield and kind of just stop any ranged weapon damage in its tracks. You also will gain toughness as you charge. With Loyal Protector, it kind of knocks everybody back, giving you a second to kind of move in and close the gap between you and any ranged weapons that might be hitting you. and also gives you, like I said, more ability to mitigate damage. Now, I did mention the Zealot before, so, I mean, inspiration from the Zealot, I think it's safe to say that they are primarily melee focused, with some perks like Purge the Unclean and Anoint in Blood granting nice ranged weapon boosts, while not limiting their ability to quickly engage in high damage, crowd controlling, or single target combat. Their tree really allows for a lot of variability without leeching too much prowess from either ranged or melee, where Ogryn's, I mean, it really doesn't. Like I said before, I think that if you are going to build Point Blank Barrage, you kind of are locked into that, almost dedicated to that tree. Point Blank Barrage, you might be able to light it up and start shooting at people, but as far as the intended effects from like the Indomitable tree, if you decide to kind of cross those two trees, it does kind of work, but at the same time, you're losing a lot of benefits from either side. So I just don't like the fact that it kind of forces you to go either certain weapons or blessings. It kind of forces you to play a certain way, which for Ogryn's already being a huge target could be not too beneficial. So, I mean, maybe getting rid of Point Blank Barrage altogether and exchanging it for a more hybrid option would possibly improve the dependability of this option of having like a ranged focused Ogryn class. Because don't get me wrong, it's very fun to play, but it's not as strong as the other two. Well, anyways, that was my little rant. Let me know what you think if you enjoyed it, or if you didn't, let me know. And as always, thanks for watching. Take care.